It was a crime that rocked the community and our country to its core. A young
Hey everyone, Chris here. Thanks for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Bullying. I'm sure many of us have experienced it, and if not, we all know that it exists. Today I'm going to be talking about teen bullying that ended up in a horrific death. This story actually happened in my hometown in Victoria, BC. Who was Reena? She was 14 years old, and she was known to have a pretty rough childhood. She really wasn't finding her way, not getting along with her family, and she had also run away a few times. She was known to be nice and sweet. She had no violent tendencies. She just seemed lost. Her family was very traditional, and they had some pretty strict rules. And Reena was finding that the people that she was meeting, the other teens, they had more relaxed parents. They allowed them to get away with a little bit more, and she just really wanted to fit in. While she was close with her grandparents and other members of the family, Reena just seemed to really clash with her parents. She ended up going and living in a group home. As a student, she was okay. She was a little overweight, but she was constantly being teased. She was certainly not one of the popular girls. In the months before the murder, there was a local girl named Kelly Ellard. She was really good friends with Josephine Bell. Now the name has been changed due to Canadian laws about minors. Both girls had a fascination with gangster rap. Serial killers, the mafia, and that was somewhat trending back in the 90s. Josephine had even bragged about stealing cars, dating gang members, and she had talked over and over about the fact that she wanted to join the mob one day. Their days in high school, they had a small group dubbed the Shoreline Six. And it was the fall of 1997. The two girls were still living their gangster life. And they were making sure that the others knew that they were tough and they were not to be messed with. The one target of theirs, unfortunately, was Reena Virk. But what fueled that fire? Well, it was stated that Reena had stolen one of Josephine's notebooks. Evidently, Reena had called some of the numbers she found in the notebook and was talking smack about Josephine. Like, we're talking, she was dissing her big time. Anyway, this pissed Josephine off when she found out. Pissed her off big time. So Josephine came up with a plan to invite Reena to a party in the field of a nearby high school. Now, this wasn't unknown. The teens gathered there all the time, and we assume because Reena was so desperate for friends, she was just so desperate to try to fit in that she did not even question the invite. She was just happy to go. So one Friday night in November, about 50 or 60 teens had gathered in the field behind Shoreline High School. And like I said, this was very common. It was known that alcohol would be poured into the 7-Eleven Slurpees. The different cliques would be starting to gather around, just a typical teen gathering. That night, almost all of them were unaware that Kelly and Josephine had concocted up a plan to beat up Reena. Later on, the police had shown up sometime in the night and broke up the party. Most of the teens dispersed, but a group of them decided to take the party underneath the Craigflower Bridge. If you were a teen in that area, you knew all about the bridge. I hung out under the bridge many, many times, but this isn't about me. Anyway, underneath the bridge, it was pretty nasty down there. There was a lot of garbage. It had graffiti on the concrete walls. The ground was pretty mucky from the gorge waterway. And not long after getting down there, that is when the fight broke out. Now, it is stated that Josephine put a lit cigarette on Reena's forehead, and when Reena cried out and tried to swing back, Kelly punched her. Soon enough, 7 people were involved in this fight. There were 6 girls and 1 boy named Warren Glowacki. Now, a group of onlooking teens watched in horror as these 7 were fighting, and they turned savage, kicking and punching Reena, who was now laying on the muddy ground crying. She was bleeding. It was terrible. The onlooking teens were begging the 7 to stop, but they wouldn't. Most of them took off running. No one offered to help, and no one stayed. A little later on, some teens saw Reena on the bridge above, stumbling and crying. It looked like she was just trying to make her way back home. But Reena never made it home. 8 long days later, police divers would retrieve her badly beaten body from the cold, dark waters of the gorge waterway. Now, during those 8 days leading up to the discovery of Reena's body, the rumors spread like wildfires throughout the schools in the groups of teens, the groups of various teens. Now, while everyone was whispering and talking about what happened, it did remain pretty much on the down low. Reena's parents, the police, teachers, all remained unaware of what happened that Friday night. On November 24th, 10 days later, Dr. Laurel Gray, the city's coroner, performed the autopsy on Reena Virk. And what was found was extensive damage to her body. She had sustained multiple blows to her stomach area. She had bruising on her face. And there was even a bruise the shape of a running shoe on the back of her brain. There were so many injuries to her body that it was stated that it looked like something that you would see in a car crash victim. When the doctor examined the lungs, she found small pebbles, and she concluded that Reena was still alive when she was first in the water. After completion of the autopsy, the doctor did conclude that it was death by drowning. The news of this shocked and horrified the local police, and after an investigation, 8 teens were arrested. 6 girls, including Josephine, were charged with aggravated assault on that first attack that happened underneath the bridge. And yeah, I said first attack because it did not stop there. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, Reena had been seen stumbling on top of the bridge trying to make her way back home. Well, 2 of the teens had actually followed her and beat her up a second time, then dragged her body into the gorge waterway where she was forcibly drowned. Because of the severity of the crime, those 2 teens, Kelly Ellard and Warren Glowacki, were charged as adults. It just makes no sense. I mean, the fight in itself did not make any sense. But then once it was over, why did those 2 continue on and go instigate more that led to a murder? It's just so tragic. Anyway, one of the things that was so odd was the fact that Warren had never been part of the original plan of Josephine and Kelly's to beat up Reena. It was stated that he ended up kicking Reena continuously during the first attack under the bridge. And then when that wasn't enough, he then went and assisted Kelly on the second attack. Kelly Ellard ended up giving a completely different version of what happened that night. When she was first interviewed by Sergeant Krista Hobday, Kelly had said that Reena's killer could have been Josephine. Yep, throwing her best friend underneath the bus to save her butt. That clearly wasn't going to work, as there was an incredible amount of evidence stacked up against her. There were numerous witness statements of her boasting that she had finished her off, that she had held a girl's head underwater. Police had also found a black Calvin Klein jacket of hers with saltwater stains on the arms that consisted with the water that was in the gorge waterway. The legal drama surrounding Kelly Ellard was so bizarre. She ended up having 3 trials, and it would take almost a decade before she was convicted. In 2000, Judge Nancy Morrison issued the lightest sentence possible to Kelly, praising the convicted killer as young, as intelligent, and from a wonderful family. What? Yeah, I know. And in 2001, the Supreme Court of Canada overturned her conviction on the grounds that she had been improperly questioned. It is just one thing after another. 2004, during the second trial, prosecutor Catherine Murray relentlessly challenged Kelly in the courtroom. Kelly, usually soft-spoken in court, and now a sarcastic Kelly, had emerged, rolling her eyes and screaming, "I'm not a monster. I will say I did not kill Reena Virk until the day I die." Anyway, a mistrial was declared when the jurors deadlocked 11-1. Now here we are in 2005. We are on the 3rd trial, once again with prosecutor Catherine Murray. This time, Kelly Ellard was finally found guilty and all further appeals were denied. Kelly continued to claim she was innocent. In 2016, many years later, Vancouver Sun crime reporter Kim Bolin broke the story that Kelly, who was now 33, was 8 months pregnant. 8 months pregnant after being allowed conjugal visits with a guy named Darwin, a man that she had become pen pals with while serving time. It just doesn't get any weirder. Anyway, after her parole hearing, for the first time, Kelly finally took responsibility for the role in Reena's murder. Although her story was a little far-fetched, she claimed that she had only brought Reena to the water to splash water on her face to see if she would wake up. Not so believable. And in fact, no one really believed that story. As of August 2019, Kelly Ellard was granted overnight leaves and extended day parole. The Reena Virk case created a moral panic about teen violence and bullying.
Well, it was certainly a wake-up call, not just for this community, but of course this story went national and international. So I think it was a wake-up call for people to understand that yes, this is possible. Yes, it can happen in your own community.
The Virk family channeled their grief over Reena's murder into a public awareness campaign against bullying and teenage violence. They successfully pushed British Columbia government to enact a series of anti-bullying programs in schools. And just to let you guys know too, there was also a book written that goes into a lot of details about this case. I did read it years ago, and I actually thought it was really good. If you are interested, I will post the title and the author's name in the description box below so you guys can check it out. This case was so crazy. Not only did this young girl get murdered for absolutely zero reason, the case itself took so many years to finally get resolved. It's just mind-blowing. Anyway, so that's it for today's story. I hope everybody is taking care of themselves and staying safe. Lots of love from Calgary, and we will chat with you soon.